Hi everyone, and welcome back to our CAEL language series. Today we're going to continue practicing our listening skills. So we'll be answering a few practice questions from a past CAEL test about the long listening passage. Now there are a few things to remember before we actually look at the questions to answer. So the long listening passages on the CAEL test will be an academic lecture. There will be around 11 questions or so to answer. And it's really important to remember that you're only ever going to hear the speaker deliver the report once. You can't ever pause and you can't replay the section. So we need to listen very carefully the first time we hear it. As a result, then you'll want to keep your ear moving in real time along with the speaker. If you hear a vocabulary word or a phrase that you are not familiar with, the best thing you can do is just to let that go and focus on the words that you do understand so that you don't miss anything important coming up. Try to answer every single question on the test, even if you have to guess. If time is running really short, it's best to just guess, and if you're lucky, you'll get a point for guessing correctly. There is a definite routine that you'll want to follow as you are completing the long listening passages for CAEL. So the first thing that's going to happen before you even hear the speaker is you're going to be given around 2.5 minutes or so to preview the questions and answer choices. So you can quickly skim read over the questions and answers, identify any key words, any important words there, so that you understand what you're going to listen for once the speaker begins talking. Now, after that 2.5 minutes or so is up, the audio is going to start to play automatically. Your job then, as you are listening, is to answer the questions on the screen at the same time. Once the speaker has finished, you will be given a little bit of time to review your answers. You'll have around 3 minutes then to go back. Make sure you have answered every single question on the test itself. And this is also a good opportunity to double check that the ones you have answered are indeed correct before you move on. Remember, because you are answering questions while you are listening to the speaker talk, you won't have time to take detailed notes. Remember as well that the computer is actually going to provide for you a summarized outline version of notes from this lecture later on when you begin the writing sections. So it's not really that important at this moment to take your own detailed notes as you're listening. Again, your primary goal is to answer all the questions on the test itself. If you have a few seconds left over after you've done reviewing your answers, you could write down a couple of key concepts then. That would be the time to do so. Now here's what a screen looks like from a long listening passage. There are long listening questions on parts 3, 4, and 5 on the CAEL test itself. We're just going to have a look at part 4 today for the long listening. Now, because you have around 11 questions to answer, they're not all going to fit on the same computer screen. So you'll notice here there's a page tab area. We are currently on page 1 or screen 1, and you can see here that only the first question is visible. When it comes time to answer the second question, you would just click with your mouse on page number 2 at the top there, and you would advance the screens that way. You would work through all 5 pages here until you've answered every single question on the test. Now you should notice as well in that top right-hand corner, there is a blue rectangular button and it has the word next written on top of it. I'm going to encourage you not to push that button during the listening section. When you click next, what happens is you just move on to the next part of the CAEL test. And because you only have around 10 minutes to preview these questions, listen to the speaker, and answer the questions, I would recommend that you use all the seconds available to you to both answer the questions and double check the information is correct. If you do finish early and click next, that's fine, but remember there is no back button on the next screen. So once you move forward, you can never come back. All right, so use that next button sparingly, if at all. Now remember, you'll have some time to read over those questions and answers before you even hear the speaker talk. So this preparation counter is going to count back. It's measured in seconds, so 150 seconds is the same as 2.5 minutes. But this clock will start counting backwards towards 0. And at this point in the test is when you come over to the first question and you start quickly skim reading, looking for keywords or important concepts. So if you read through this question here, you'll see that it's talking about animals and it's asking you to identify the periods where they were domesticated. So you would quickly have a look at the animals listed and I guess the time periods as well. So you now know what you're listening for when the speaker's talking. And you just continue all the way through all 5 pages. We're now just on page 2. So you're looking at the keywords from the question and you are quickly looking at the answer choices. So you're tucking these keywords back into your memories for later. Here's question 3. It talks about a trait that is least favored for animal domestication, and you see the answer choices here. So again, you would continue that process and read through every single question, finishing that off before that preparation time clock reaches 0. As soon as that happens, the audio is actually going to start to play. Now we're going to practice 2 questions today to put our listening skills to good use. So we're going to look at question 3 here now. So this question again asks you to identify one trait from animals that is least favored for domestication. You can see the answer choices there are strong, gentle, aggressive, and small. So on the CAEL test, the entire audio passage will play from start to finish, and you would answer all 11 questions in one go. But for today's practice, what I'm going to do is just play you a very small part of this audio. And somewhere within this audio selection, you will hear the answer to this question. So I'm asking you to keep your ears open for these particular keywords that we have identified on the screen. All right, let's listen now, and hopefully you can identify the answer before we talk about it.
That primarily serve as food sources, dogs may have had a different path of domestication. The most modern view holds that dogs were domesticated naturally through the mutual benefits of a partnership in hunting. Humans and wolves hunted the same prey. Wolves could spot the prey easily and harass the prey continuously. Human intellect and weapons meant more efficient hunting and more meat from hunting activities, and possibly some scraps for the wolves. Humans would not mind tamer and less aggressive animals around. Naturally, tamer species would stay with humans, while more aggressive and more successful animals would stay wild.
Okay, so that was the section of the audio where this answer would have been given to you. So hopefully you've located it. If not, what I'd like to do now, just to help us out as we're studying from home, is I'd like to provide just a small transcript of what we just heard the speaker talk about. On the real CAEL test, remember, you won't have a transcript. You would simply listen and answer the questions and move on. But again, as we study together, I'd like to show you the words on the screen that you just heard the speaker say. And together we'll be able to pinpoint the selection, I guess, that gives us the answer to this question. So if you quickly skim read the transcript there on the left, I'm hoping that your eyes are resting towards the bottom of the screen. You should be recognizing some words there. I see the word aggressive right in the transcript. So that was one of the words that we heard the speaker talk about. And you'll notice that aggressive is one of the traits that are listed there in the answer choices. So if we focus in on the ideas presented, what the speaker was talking about is that tamer species are the ones that humans want to keep by their side. Humans don't want aggressive animals. They want the aggressive animals to stay in the wild. And because this question is asking us what is least favored or least preferred for domestication, we have our answer. Humans don't want to have aggressive animals around. They would rather domesticate tame animals. So hopefully you identify answer C here, aggressive, as the correct answer. And in the test again, the audio would simply have continued playing, and you would select page number 3 at the top there and start answering the questions on the screen before you. So we're going to do one more practice question for today, and I'd like to have a look at question number 5. So remember, we would have previewed the questions and answers already, but just to remind ourselves here, we're listening for information about this man's name, Richard Boulier. So as soon as you hear his name mentioned in the audio clip, your ears are going to perk right up and you're hopefully listening for one of these answers. Now, Richard Boulier is going to tell us the reason why he thinks animals were domesticated. So you can see the 4 answer choices are here. It's either about food, religion, companionship, or labor. So once again, I'm going to play a slightly longer clip this time. The entire audio is around 5 minutes. You are now going to hear about 1.5 minutes of this audio. I'll make it a little bit harder for you. You're listening specifically for Richard Boulier's name, and hopefully you can answer this question. Here's the audio now.
Such as cows and sheep would have been domesticated mainly as a source of food. The proof of the domestication process can be seen in the high proportion of the bones of young animals found in old human settlements. This may suggest a starting point of animal domestication. Sheep and goats are very common with pastoral nomads, tribes who would move all year long in search of fresh grass for the animals. Cattle and pigs were domesticated slightly later and became more representative of settled communities. By domesticating animals, humans would have constant access to meat and other animal products. Later, some of the animals, such as oxen, would also be used to perform physically difficult work. There do exist alternative theories for the domestication process. For instance, Richard Boulier, a professor of history at Columbia University, argues that animals were first used and domesticated for religious purposes. He argues that if humans wanted meat, they would kill the animals they found instead of putting the animals in an enclosure or pen and wait for them to breed. Boulier suggests that animals would be kept and used for recurring religious practices, such as summer solstice celebrations, or used as sacrifices in case of droughts or other natural disasters. The theory offers an explanation of why the animals would be kept unharmed for some time.
Okay, so again, within that section of the audio clip, you would have heard the answer to this question. So let's talk a little bit more about it using the transcript again as a guide. So again, you won't have a transcript on the real test, but we will look at it today as we practice together. So about halfway through that clip that you heard, I'm hoping you identified the name Richard Boulier. As soon as the speaker spoke his name, your ears are open and at attention, and you're trying to figure out why he believes animals were domesticated. Shortly after his name was introduced in the lecture, the reason was given to us. So we heard the speaker say that animals were first used and domesticated for religious purposes. That's all you need to hear. As soon as you hear that detail, you're going to automatically select answer B here as your correct answer for religion. And then you would be waiting to answer question 6. So if you look down at question 6 on the screen, you'll see that this next question talks about David Anthony. So you would be waiting then for the speaker to mention his name so that you can answer that question and so on. Okay, so again, we've only answered 2 questions today. Remember that during the test, you would answer all the questions from start to finish. So questions 1 to 11, and the audio clip would just play all the way through without stopping. So let's recap, I guess, what we did with our listening strategies as you continue to practice at home. Remember, you're always going to have some time to read over your questions and answer choices first. So take advantage of this time and just get familiar with some of the key words that you're going to listen for as the speaker talks next. You'll have around 2.5 minutes to do this in total. Then you're going to listen to the audio as it will automatically play. Sometimes you'll actually hear specific words mentioned in the questions. Today, the second question we answered about Richard Boulier, it was fairly easy to listen specifically for his name, and then our answer followed that shortly. Sometimes so in the questions, you're going to have different language used in the actual speech. So it really boils down to recognizing synonyms and paraphrased ideas sometimes when you're matching the answer choices to the audio itself. So just be prepared for that in some of these questions. You're answering as many questions as you possibly can while you are listening to the audio. If you've missed a question, my advice is just to skip it for now and go on to the next question. So again, answer as many as you can as you are listening. Most of those questions will be phrased in the same order that the speaker's talking about. So that helps keep you on track to a point. Because you are intently trying to answer these questions while you listen, please do not take detailed notes. You simply won't have time to do both. Again, leave your notes for the end if you've got any leftover time after you've finished answering. And do remember that the computer will provide a summarized outline for you later on. After this audio has finished, you can't play it again, but you will be given an additional 3 minutes or so of time. And you're going to use that time to go back and double check that everything has been answered. You've not left any question blank whatsoever. And you can also use this time to double check that you've answered those questions correctly. If you want to change any answers, now would be the time to do so before that timer reaches 0. And one last tip, I guess, please answer all the questions, even if you have to guess. If you've got 2 questions left and not enough time to get into them, click something and answer something. Never leave an answer blank. You know, if you get lucky and guess correctly, you could earn a point for that particular question. All right, so that was our second practice for the long listening section on CAEL. Next week, we're going to do one final practice with this particular passage. Join me then.